Tim,
Hi,
thank
Nick.
you for doing this.
Yeah,
Thank
my
you
pleasure.
for joining us.
My pleasure.
Would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Tim Slough. I'm Vice President of Business Development for Magna Sun International. I have been doing this for about 29 years now. Really started off in operations for about 15 of those years and segued into sales thereafter. And obviously I'm responsible for revenue growth at the company and also managing the client's expectations with respect to how they're, whether it's a program that's being onboarded and developed or implemented. I handle both facets of that just to ensure our clients are getting what they need signage-wise.
Hey, great. So what type of customer who is Magna's client?
So it's evolved. Magna started off as a big wholesaler, and we've now evolved into having a greater presence on the retail side and perhaps a lesser presence on the wholesale side. And that growth has been facilitated primarily with casual fine dining and the QSR sector. We have other clients. We work with Caterpillar, Volvo Trucks, etc., Pandora. But right now it seems as most of our activity, including development primarily, is in the casual fine dining, quick serve restaurant sectors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what would you say one of the challenges are in implementing a brand or delivering what you do for your customer?
It's a great question. And really the thing that I find, I have found this throughout my career, is the client introduces a concept. And a lot of times the client is given a pretty picture and it wows them. They love it. But whether they actually have looked into the application of that concept, what facilities do you have to brand? Where are you doing this? And how does that translate? That's really what I find to be the most challenging part, because if you properly develop it and you understand your portfolio, and you understand how you want an application to appear and to function, then you're going to be better off. But I find more and more that companies are reluctant to perhaps assign dollars to that process, and then they're challenged at the back end. They have trouble at the back end, and maybe it costs them more, but it may not cost corporate more. It may cost franchisees or divisions more in the back end because they didn't really take the time to properly develop a program and they're paying the price later on.
Yeah, so development is important. And when you said, they have a picture versus, an actual result,
Yep.
You're just talking about maybe a 2D design package or something that shows them what their image looks like. And then, so there's a difference between it actually being built and that image?
It is literally that. It is. They have found someone who provides an amazing 2D image, and it really wows them. And there's probably some content behind it, the reason why they created that image, what the potential value of having that image is, right? And then they think this is fantastic. Let's go with it. And then when they get into it, they realize, wait a minute here. Sometimes, wait a minute. We have facilities that look this way, or we haven't thought about doing it on a high-rise or in a campus setting or in wayfinding signage or what have you. And that's where there's a lot of discussion that comes up down the road and how you either change concept or modify the concept. But oftentimes, the due diligence at the front end hasn't really been thorough, and you piece it together later on, and it's painful. It can be painful. Right. It can be costly as well.
So how do you convince a client, let's say doing a rollout, because you're about to enter high stakes, right? Because you mentioned QSRs, you mentioned
Sure.
a couple of verticals that are very aggressive as far as scheduling goes, moving quickly, implementing signs. So you would build all of these elements and then, I guess, manage the rollout of the sites being installed. It's high stakes, right?
Correct. Yeah, and there's a variety of ways of going about developing a program, right? I'm using development as a kind of a universal, generic statement on getting started in a program. Sometimes programs are already established to an extent, and you're trying to fine tune them and make it a bit more efficient and economical. Okay. Other times it may be a new image. Okay. There's I'll use an example of a client I had a few years ago, major bank. You all may work with them, and I was very involved with the development stage there. And it was the designer came up with the concept and would approach the sign companies, our sign company at the time, and would get feedback. Hey, we're looking at this. What do you think? What do you see the pitfalls being down the road? All right. We're considering this element for this side, this line of the business, right? Or that signage for this high rise or what have you. So they were instrumental in asking, before I introduce this to the client, I want to make sure that I don't step on I have a problem later on because I've just introduced a concept that's so expensive to implement that it really makes us look bad. So getting that feedback and doing a proper development, due diligence, development, and working with the sign companies and even the vendors, 3M and the paint companies and the LED companies, et cetera, it's very important for them to understand what is possible before you go all in on a particular concept.
Yeah. So you're let's say going to meet with a brand to help them understand what's about to happen. What other things because there are so many people involved, right? Not just a fabricator.
There can be, yes.
I mean, there's probably a brand team involved. They have a certain design in mind.
Ideally.
And then you have a whole bunch of vendors you need to deal with as well. Like you mentioned 3M or paint and materials. Do you try to assemble like a team together to help you get this done? Like how do you go?
Great question.
Yeah.
Several years ago, we're in Vegas and we're meeting with this client I referenced before. And the intent was, hey, they're all going to be there. All of the vendors who are going to be providing the raw materials that are needed for your program are going to be at this show. Why don't we go ahead and have a meeting of the minds and get them all together? Every raw material supplier was there, and it started there, and then we branched outward. Okay, so you're helping with this, you're helping with that. We're talking about what pitfalls may lie if we continue down this path with these products, and then you just keep fine-tuning it. Designers there, raw material suppliers are there, implementers are there. There's a few usually advisors who are there to listen and understand this, understand that, to add to the discussion. That is the ideal circumstance. It isn't always that way.
Yeah. I was just going to ask, how often does that happen?
Yeah, I mean, and they're spending a lot of money to make that happen.
Sure.
And they're spending a lot of money to make sure that before they shoot the gun off, it's loaded well and it makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. More often than not, it's a piecemeal. There's someone in mind, someone who has the concept understood, may even have some good information on how to properly develop it, may even have knowledge of who to seek to get advice on certain things, and then they start working together. But ultimately, more often than not, I don't see a full team behind them that they're paying properly to do this the right way, to make sure that implementation goes as smoothly as it should.
Yeah.
And so the challenge that you have as an implementer is you're trying to understand, okay, the program starts here, right? You have an image, maybe it's already existing. You're at this stage of your program. What can we do now to understand the need behind the need, make things better, more efficient, providing the image that you want, maybe enhancing the image if possible, and then seeing it through thereafter. But there's a variety of ways of doing it. It just all depends on the commitment by the client initially. And in many cases, you try to sell them initially. Hey, have you properly developed this concept? Let me give you another example if I could. I recently had my Papa John's client come to me and say, we'd like to implement these interior elements in the stores. And we said, absolutely, we're happy to help you do that. And the answer was, let's go ahead and get going. Just go ahead and do it. Well, I said, there's things to think about. You can't just create the sign, ship it, and hope for the best. Like, what do you mean? Why not? The image is already established. We understand the layout. We understand where it's going. It'll look fine in the window. I believe you're right, it'll look fine. But when you light this thing up behind a tinted glass with ambient light and other things, then what? Oh, okay. So, guys, let me show it to you first. Because if I don't show it to you first, you may get to the field and see it and think, this is terrible.
Yeah.
And they're going to point the finger at me and say, what happened? And it's better off that we go through a process to show you what it might look like, and then you'll feel better implementing it, and so will the franchisee. In this case, we actually showed them, so we're going to do it your way, and I'm going to show you what happens. And we did it, shipped a sign, gets out there, franchisee said, it's not lighting properly. Well, it's lighting exactly as it's spec to light, but it's not shining through this tint, or it's not breaking through.
So you're talking about a sign that's behind the glass.
Yes, exactly.
A restaurant chain.
Exactly.
Facing out into a parking lot, and people are driving by, and they can't see it.
Right. Now you're going to go back out there and add LEDs to the sign in the field and hope for the best. It worked out. We were able to show them this is why you want to do it in-house.
You can always
first.
add more.
Yeah.
I mean, up front, it's very costly probably to do that in the field, right? Versus
it is
initially.
Yeah.
You can dim things down, but adding more is very.
And I say to them, listen, guys, we can always use the prototypes. Mm-hmm. And so don't think we're gonna sell this to you and throw it away. We're gonna sell it and we'll use it, but let me show it to you first, and you get a feel for it, and you'll feel a lot better in doing so.
Yeah. So prototyping, how important is that? Yeah.
So I think prototyping is the essence of ensuring that your signage, your finished product, are doing exactly as you want to do them, right? I think, Nick, you and I talked about not long ago about a client, or a client now, prospect then, who asked that we help them with some interior elements.
Yeah.
And we said, we'd be happy to, but let's go ahead and we understand that the 2D concept, it looks fantastic, let's do it. But then when you get into it, you guys are great enough to say, hey, Tim, you should be aware of this, this, and this.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that. It was important for me to engage those who know better, and then go back to them and say, listen, we're realizing that there's some things that you need to be aware of. And so for this reason, we are emphasizing the need to prototype. We need to make sure we can make these properly and that you bless them before we proceed. I can't tell you how many times I have seen where they say, just go, 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 and you get it out there, and it's not what they thought.
Yeah, and that job was. It's a very difficult application, and it's going to be in a very difficult spot to access later. So even more, it's even more important that they see that.
It was an interior in the vestibule, on the ceiling.
Yeah.
With LEDs, your components, and there was an expectation that this is going to be a focal point. They're going to see this from outside and then come inside, and there was a transition also to consider, right? Obviously, you see something from the outside. What does it look like when you get inside? Does it look the same? Does it look better?
Yeah.
What are you wanting? And that wasn't. There was no commitment to doing a prototype, and so for that reason, we said, you know what, we're going to probably stick with the exterior signs that you have seen. And we'll circle back to interiors later once you feel more comfortable with doing a prototype session.
Yeah, and that's very, very rare for somebody to take that position. But I think renderings are great. They can be relied upon for certain things, and like so many things at Bitro, we do custom or we do the hard way. We even try to match our renderings to we call it like fidelity is very important to us between intent and actual. So even with our renderings, we try to really match what you would see visually, but it doesn't always happen. So things look great in concept, but I think prototyping is
I can recall prototyping with clients, and you've done exactly as they want. They are wanting to prototype, so you prototype it and they say, you've done exactly as we want and we think we've got it, so let's go ahead and move forward with it. And the key word was think. And they do it and they realize there's something this is not popping like we want it to. There's, we need to bring the life into the sign. How do we make this look better?
Right, environment counts.
Yeah, well, and it was really, in this example, it was a slight change of a feature to the sign, and it helped us hit it. They saw it and thought, this is it. This is perfect. As a matter of fact, it was a huge success because it didn't add any cost at all to anyone. It was a spec change that is pretty much off the shelf raw material, and the price was the same as what was used previously. So that was a win-win. But those things happen on occasion, and you just make a tweak here or a tweak there, and all of a sudden, wow, you've got a much better image. But signage is such an important function to a brand, and those changes can really make a huge difference in
Sure.
in what is promoted, how the brand is promoted, and how much revenue is driven because of it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we've only met recently, you and I.
That's right.
But
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
of Bitro for so long. You know, I heard you talking to Eddie earlier about how young you both still look.
Well, he does.
Yeah.
I'm not that young looking anymore.
Yeah. But tell me what you've seen, you know, throughout Bitro's history that you're aware of, or, you know, is there something interesting that you feel we've done for the industry, or, you know, something we're doing that can help you in your challenge that you're facing with your customer?
I think that the two big things that stand out to me was, and there are many companies who, when you approach them with volume, their eyes open, they're excited about it, and they'll go and do whatever they need to on the development side to make it happen, right? But what happens down the road when you're involved with different applications and you need the service of that company to come back in and really help out? This is where you guys really dominate. You're arguably one of the more formidable lighting solutions providers in the industry. And you know, I've known Eddie for a while, and I credit Eddie for that intensity, because I'll use Bank of America I used to work with at a prior stop, and there was an interior element at the flagship stores they wanted to introduce. And they were very fanatical, along with the designer, in making sure the illumination was just right. They changed the colors in the logo. They wanted to make sure that there was a side lit option, and it had to check all the boxes, and it did. And we had an application actually in Philadelphia where we had to get some help on the service sector. And Eddie came, not only did he get involved, but he actually went to the site to see it firsthand. Now, that's not expected all the time, I realize that, but for the level of expectation and the importance of a brand and making sure it's being done, it's exciting to know you're with a partner who is willing to really pull out of the stops and make it happen as well as you do. So that's the biggest. Obviously, the products are fantastic, your people are fantastic, but I highlight the back-end service because it's important to me.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of grew up in the service side of things, you know, project management, service, and so I know how important it is to be able to call someone and say, I need your help. Here's what's going on here. Can you help step in and give us a hand? And when they do it well. It means a lot. And Eddie and team has always done that, and it really means a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great to hear, and it's part of his character, like you said earlier, and it's also it's become part of our DNA. Almost anybody who comes aboard Bitro, you know, they just naturally think the same way, and then that ideal just gets refined over time.
Yeah.
You know, until it turns into, you know, another Bitro believer, you know, kind of doing the thing. It's also nice that we're still privately owned, you know, and Eddie still gets to make those decisions. He and Tim.
For now, right?
You know. Yeah. For now. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
kidding, I'm
That's
kidding.
definitely.
You guys are heavy hitters in the industry that everyone, I know there's a lot of talk about Bitro. There has been many designers that I work with always bring you up. I jokingly say this, obviously, but I would be surprised if others are trying to emulate the way you do things here.
Yeah, I think not enough. It would be nice. It would be nice to see more. Like, so what we do, you know, at times it tends to come at a premium, right?
Yeah.
I think it's one of our challenges. We hear, you know, maybe Bitro's too expensive, or, you know, but often not mentioned or considered is that service. That's hard to tell the story on, of course, because everybody says they're that, right? So I think saving time, saving effort, saving money, understanding the long-term process of every project, and what some of the implications are down the road when it comes to maintaining a system or the life cycle of a system. I think that's something we focus on. That's a value that doesn't necessarily get recognized enough.
Well, I think that one of the challenges that the industry faces is that I don't know that the drivers of the let's call it the launch of the brand know, hey, bring in your partners early on.
Yeah.
Because if you wait till down the road a bit, you're going to miss some things here, or you're going to have some challenges. So bringing you guys in early is obviously key. And then I think when you do that, you're pleasantly surprised at what you get.
Yeah.
Premium, I have grown to learn. You pay more, and it's worth it every time. Far too often we try to go the cheap route, and we know what happens.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a premium well worth it. And furthermore, if you all understand what is ahead of you in the program, and you talk through all of that, that helps perhaps alleviate the premium pain, maybe, or offset it even, right? So I think that discussion on how they want it done and what's to come later on are important discussions to have with you then, because then you can maybe offset the premium, and but also help with all that you do so well for everybody.
Yeah, collaboration is critical.
Yeah.
And we're finding nowadays more and more, you mentioned, bringing them in the beginning, early on, for any program, or, to have the right people at the table, the whole group that kind of can understand and explain the whole chain of things that are about to happen. We found it's been saving clients a lot of time. Brands, fabricators, designers, they also gain a collective understanding of what each party needs to do, or it's just so nice to be able to answer all the questions there in one shot. How does that happen often enough? Like,
no.
Or how can we collaborate or work to make those things happen more often?
It doesn't happen enough, and it isn't necessarily the fault of the salesperson or the company, because I know that there are many times when I say, listen, I need to get these folks involved, and I think it'd be beneficial for them to hear you, because I'm going to go there as a service guy who knows project management, but I'm not going to hear everything that they're going to say some things that you may hear differently than I would.
Sure.
And that's why I think it's important to bring in your partners early on. I will admit, I am not a designer. I don't create concepts. I help implement them. And it is important for me to recognize it's now time to bring in your partner. And for me, it's usually very early on, and maybe in some cases too early, but at least they're involved. And I think it's beneficial for the longevity of the program to get those involved as early as possible. So.
Yeah. So what would you say to, if you had a wish list, if you can make a wish and say, okay, I would love brands to know X, designers to know X, and then some of your vendors to know, what are some of the things you would tell these?
Boy, that's
you really wish these parties would know and understand to make things better.
I'll tell you what I think. I think that I think that when you have to understand what you're trying to launch, what you're trying to implement. And so I think it's important for a client to understand, what do I have out there? I mean, I have heard clients tell me, Tim, I don't really know what the facilities look like. I don't know what's out there. Understand what's out there, because that's going to help you in development, right? Okay, understand what's out there. Standardize as much as you possibly can. It's going to make implementation easier. It's going to drive down cost, right? Economy of scale. And then create a hierarchy of signs and create rules of engagement. Because you're going to have applications that come up that are custom in nature, and you may forget about it. It may be a one-off. But if I have those standards already set, but I also have some rules of engagement, if I can't use this, here are the rules on how to use the image, then that's going to make life a lot easier, right? Understand what you have out there.
That's right. So from the client perspective, the client that's your wish list for the client. Understand what you have out there.
What's out there, standardize as much as possible. Okay. And then create the rules of engagement, hierarchy of signs, usage criteria. And that's going to help you with it's the good, the bad, the ugly, right? Mm-hmm. It'll help you with the ugly. And I think just understanding that better would really make life a lot easier on a lot of sign programs if people would just consider that.
Sure. And what about designers? What would you tell designers?
I think designers need to be engaged with sign companies more. because their wonderful design may end up being, if I could, I'll give you another example. I dealt with a QSR years ago, and you'll know them very well, out of Ohio. They wanted to launch this amazing, beautiful brand, but it cost the design. There was two options: $1 million option and a $750,000 option. Okay, well, they're selling burgers for $5 a piece. Who's going to pay $1 million for an upgrade of the image? That's going to be hard to do. So they scrapped it entirely. So the money spent with the designer to come up with a great concept was scrapped because it was too expensive. So understand what your concept is going to cost you in the field before you. I realize there's going to be some tweaks here and there anyway, but you can't go into it with a concept that's going to be so off the charts expensive that it's not going to make sense for you guys to implement.
Mm-hmm.
Have some knowledge, seek out those who can provide information to you that makes more sense, makes the concept make more sense once applied.
Sure. And now
that's really it.
What about for the vendors you work with? Because I'm sure you're working on some pretty big stuff.
Yeah.
National chains, global chains.
You
right?
know, I think that I keep going back to the service side of it. It's imperative that the expectation of what is needed once you're launching is set with the vendors and reset. Like I always say, set expectations, but constantly reset expectations. Mm-hmm. If you do that in the industry, you'll be successful.
So hold on a minute. Reset the expectations.
Yep.
So I guess that's through communication regularly along. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
reset.
So I have always told any project management staff I have worked with, any vendors I work with who are involved in the program, who have inspected the program, the initial expectations are set, all right? And naturally, the human will forget about what those expectations were down the road. So you got to set and reset, and reset and reset and reset, because you're always going to have to go back to it at some point in time. And I can't tell you how many times I have told a project manager, if you don't set and reset expectations constantly, you're going to miss something at some point in time, or someone's going to miss something, and then the customer's going to come back to you and point the finger and say what happened. Even though they know about it, even though it's in writing, you still need to constantly set expectations and reset expectations.
Sure.
So that everyone understands what's coming up. Mm-hmm. That's a very important process, I believe, in any program.
Good. Tim, thank you very much for doing this.
Appreciate it. Yeah,
Great,
my pleasure. I hope it helps.
To have you. Yeah, thank you.
I hope it helps.
Awesome.